Utah may have two losses, but they still have a path to the Big 12 title game, and honestly, it's not as crazy as you may think.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time tuning into our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Huge shout out to all of these who do make our show your first listen every day. Thank you for being an everydayer of Locked On Utes. Today's show is brought to you by our great friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College, all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. My name is JT Wistrcill, excited to be joined on today's show by Sam Foster, sports editor of the Daily Universe. And Sam, this Utah team is heating up, and they're heating up at the right time. They've gotten some massive Big 12 wins, and because of those massive recent wins, they are still alive for the Big 12 title race, even though they have two losses. The path is not easy because you don't control your own destiny. But the nice thing is a Cincinnati, a BYU, a Texas Tech. Tech and Cincy don't play, but BYU will see both Cincy and Tech as soon as this week, because you get some of these other top teams that play each other, and even a Houston who doesn't play those teams showing massive cracks in the armor. If Utah wins out, they have to win out. But if they do, Sam, there's still a chance they can get in this thing.
It's not likely. So if you're a Utah fan, don't get your hopes up. But what this really reminds me of is that 2022 season where every single thing had to just go right for Utah to make it to the Pac-12 championship. And they even got lucky with the fact that it wasn't South versus North that year. It was just the two best teams. So like every single possible scenario that had to fall right for Utah did. That's kind of what this reminds me of. I mean, there's weird tiebreakers where, Utah doesn't hold a tiebreaker over BYU or Tech, but let's say somehow Cincinnati, BYU, Utah, and Tech all go in with two losses, then that kind of helps out Utah because Cincinnati would have beaten BYU in that scenario. There's so many different little things. I'm not counting on Utah to make it. And another thing is a lot of people are figuring out scenarios where Utah could play BYU in a championship game. And for me, it's like, whoa, that's going already way over my head because you need to focus on getting in at first. Don't worry about who you're playing. You need to focus on actually a scenario to get into the championship game. You got to get lucky from BYU and Tech this week. Whichever way falls out shapes who you want to cheer for the 2 weeks after that. It's so much to comprehend, but I mean, I'm trying my best here.
The Utah BYU, we'll talk about that one a little more in a moment. I think it's a little more likely than you do. It's, once again, like not the most likely outcome that Utah gets in there. But I do think it's more likely because of the teams that we're talking about. Number one, I'll say this. I think Texas Tech doesn't lose a Big 12 game this year. Honestly, if Utah were to see Tech again in the Big 12 title game, I would pick Tech. Like, I think Tech is clearly the best team in this conference. I think they proved that on Saturday. So that hands BYU a loss. And we'll talk more about that game in a little bit. Also got to talk about where Utah is going to end up in the college football playoff rankings, which do drop later tonight. We're excited to see those. But the other teams that you need to have another loss, like a BYU, they play a Tech. They also have to go to Cincinnati. I still think it's a pretty good Cincinnati team. So I'm very curious to see how that one shakes out. But while I do like that Cincinnati team, I don't know if that's a Cincinnati team that I look at and I go, okay, against an Arizona and a TCU, even if I think they have a chance to beat a BYU, I could easily see them dropping two more too. And we already talked about like a Houston losing two more games. So yes, things have to go Utah's way. But with the way BYU's looked, with how vulnerable Cincinnati's looked, and let's not forget, they haven't been blowing everyone out either, I do think there's a decent shot that those could be two lost teams, Sam, by the time in Big 12 play, by the time we get to the end of the regular season.
Yeah, and you're leaving now. BYU also faces TCU the week after Tech. TCU is 6-2. I mean, maybe they're not going to be competing for the Big 12 championship. Maybe, people have kind of written them off already, but like 6-2, they're no slouch. BYU has to go on the road to Lubbock. That's going to be a real tough battle. They're going to get banged up. I mean, Tech's D-line, Utah saw when they played them. Tech's D-line is legit. I think Tech is really going to take it to BYU's offensive line. They're going to get beat up. Even if they come out with a win, they're going to be banged up the next week. And then you have to play at home TCU. That's not the easiest route. And then right after TCU, you have to go at Cincinnati. So I think people are so focused on, at Tech, at Cincy. TCU is right there, lodged into BYU's schedule, just out of nowhere. It's going to be hard. Cincy's schedule is a lot easier, because they play Arizona.
Yeah, that's
but they still play BYU and TCU.
Mm-hmm.
So this next week, Cincy should win, although I don't know, maybe Cincy just wasn't as good as we thought, but I still think they're pretty decent. Definitely had a favorable schedule for the first half of the season, but yeah, I would keep my eye out for that TCU game against BYU because I think people are forgetting about that.
If you're a Utah Utes fan, your second favorite team in the Big 12 is TCU. They get Houston, they get BYU, and they get Cincinnati still. And you really need to meet, like, if BYU beats a Texas Tech this week, that's not good for Utah because Texas Tech's like the rest of their schedule. And yes, there's still strength of schedule things where Utah can get in over Tech, but Tech's last two games are not good at all. I think it's like, let me pull it back up here. It's like Oklahoma State, it's UCF and West Virginia.
Yeah,
like it's
UCF
not, I know West Virginia got their upset bid, but like that's
they aren't
not
doing
going
it
to happen
again.
too.
No.
And it's the same thing I said with like Houston. Like we agree, Sam, right? Like Houston doesn't look like a Big 12 like championship title like game team to me, right? I think there's just a lot of cracks in the armor there. I can't get that Oregon State overtime like win on the road even like out of my head because it's a bad Beavers team. So I feel like this will end up coming down to a Utah, a BYU, a Tech, and I still might include Cincinnati in there. I just think they're clearly the fourth best team in the Big 12 right now with what happened to Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I mean, right now it would go Tech and BYU, whichever way you want to put it, or 1 and 2. I would say small, tiny gap, Utah. Big gap, Cincinnati. And like we said, Utah has to get lucky a little bit. Cincinnati could play spoiler to a few teams. And let's say like out of nowhere, Cincinnati wins out. They're in. Like, could you imagine Cincinnati in the Big 12 championship game? So I personally can't. Like to me, it's just so heavy on those top three teams of Tech, BYU, Utah. But I don't know. Who knows? Cincinnati could sneak in there, play spoiler to Utah or Tech or BYU season or whatever. It's going to be difficult, and I'm trying to wrap my head around all these scenarios, and it's a lot. So
it's a ton. And I will say, I like that Cincinnati team. We've seen this happen to teams before where you come into a storm that is a Salt Lake City night game and you do figure it out the rest of the way after. Now, figuring out the rest of the way after is in not losing another game. Like I think Cincinnati is a 9-3 team is still an incredibly successful season for what we all thought the Bearcats were going to do. That to me feels more likely than 10-2 right now, but I could see a world where they are able to win out and they do get a BYU in their building. That's a Cougar that has continued to find ways to win, but has not been blowing teams out all the way Utah has. But Utah lost the head-to-head to BYU, so BYU has, well, not the edge there. That's the funny thing about this. I actually think if you beat a team head-to-head, you should get in over them. I'm glad from Utah's perspective that's not the case, but I think they need to fix that in the rankings. And as Sam mentioned it briefly earlier, also, this whole Utah-BYU thing, I'd love to see it happen. And I've been looking at this chart all day, like trying to get to it. There's only like two outcomes, and they're just absolutely wild. You need like Tech to go down, Cincy. Like it's just so much, Sam. Like trying to get a Utah versus BYU, as fun as it is, that is by far the least likely possibility that we have discussed so far in this show.
And how great would that be? I mean, that would totally be the biggest Holy War game of my lifetime. And I can't speak past like the year 2000, maybe there was some crazy game in like 1955 that was awesome, but like as far as like my memory serves, that would be the biggest game, and just a chance for KYLE Whittingham to maybe get revenge, go out on top. And let's say he does retire, this would be his perfect chance to kind of go out on top. Or maybe it's the other way. Maybe it's Kalani Sitake just finally kind of putting a nail in the coffin. I mean, there's so many storylines with that, just on both on BYU and Utah side going forward. That would just be so amazing. And that's what's so cool about having these two teams back in the same conference. And that's what sucked about BYU being independent for so long, was just that, we didn't get these cool games. I mean, every single Holy War game still was cool, but like the meaning is diminished. It sucks when you're playing in week 1 and it has no impact on the rest of the season. It's not fun. So hopefully there's a way that it works out. It's not likely, but it would be amazing.
It would be amazing. Gosh, if KYLE Whittingham lost 4 straight to BYU, like that, I will say, then there's no way he retires. Like there's not a single chance he would go out if he got BYU again in the title game and proceed to lose them again. There's no way to. But this Utah team did lose to BYU once. They lost to Tech. They have 2 losses. So where are they going to end up though? Not just in the Big 12 title race, but in the first college football rankings, which we do get later tonight. That's what we're going to dive into in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at bigger payouts. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. How great has it been having the NBA back? Yes, the World Series just wrapped up, but we also get college basketball back. College football's been absolutely electric this year. If you bet on Utah this past weekend, you did very well with what they did to Cincinnati. But which NBA team do you think is going to keep it rolling? Can the Jazz have a successful year? It's going to be tough, but Lauri Markkanen is doing his best, right? So we'll see. But right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Sam Foster back with me here. Sam, we get our first official college football rankings reveal tonight. I'm really excited to see where Utah is. Utah made a huge leap in the AP poll. They were 25 basically because we had like a weird like BYU and Miami, I think it was tied at 10. So they were technically 24. It was strange, but they jump all the way up from what was 25, it should have been at least, to 17. And I think that is going to be right around where they end up at. I went through the exercise myself and was trying to say, okay, where is this committee going to have a Utah team favored? And I don't see how they're not in the top 20. Like, yes, they have 2 losses, but I look at Utah versus a Missouri, and you aren't going to say like, hey, Missouri plays in the SEC. Yeah, but they haven't beaten anyone. Like Utah hammered an Arizona State team that, say what they want, backup quarterback. I saw that backup quarterback just go on the road and beat an Iowa State team. I saw Utah as well just take down a Cincinnati team that at the very least is a really good team this season. So I feel like Utah will be in the top 20. I have them at 17. Where do you feel like Utah falls in the committee's eyes?
I think where it is in the AP poll right now is kind of exactly where it's going to be in the CFP as well. Let's see, they say they put them in like number 15, number 14, which I don't think they will. That would definitely be the very high end of where they're going to put Utah today. That's really interesting because where they put them today could really affect maybe getting a third team into the playoff from the Big 12. I don't think that's going to happen, but like, let's say they do put them at 14, 15. You only have to move up 3 spots for that. You would have to get lucky with maybe there's like a bad conference champion here and there. So maybe certain conferences only get 1 team in. But let's say they are 14. You have to jump 2 spots. That's really, really doable with Utah's schedule. Just win in dominating fashion. And I think that's why people like this Utah team kind of a lot right now. I think that's why they jumped so high in the AP poll, was that besides the 2 losses, which are good losses, but you would still like to win one of those. Besides those 2 losses, you're dominating teams. If you go out and you win every single game by 30 plus again, you're going to have a lot more of a say, even if you don't make it to a conference championship game, than if you just kind of squeak out some wins. But you have to get help. Like, we know that. It sucks that you have to root for other teams to lose and for all these things to fall just for a certain team to get help. But I would watch for maybe how high they rank Utah tonight, because that could be emblematic of what they do in a few weeks when actual rankings come out.
Style points are huge for Utah at this point.
Yeah.
If what you say has any chance of coming true, like if there is a chance, actually, I don't think it's a likely chance, kind of like what we talked about in the last segment. Honestly, it's probably more likely that Utah gets in the Big 12 title game, I'd even say, then Big 12 gets 3 college football playoff teams in, but the chaos, you can't ignore it. And if a 2-loss Utah teams, only 2 losses are to Tech and BYU, let's say Tech beats a BYU, and then neither of those 2 teams lose another regular season game, both of them are in the Big 12. Like, you cannot keep either one of those 2 out of the college football playoff at that point. And then you need help if you're Utah. But if Utah blows out Kansas State, blows out Baylor, blows out Kansas, all of those teams too are kind of these frisky Big 12 teams where like one day they can actually be decent and give you a game, and the next they'll have like a terrible loss. But like, that's what those teams are capable of doing. So if you're Utah and you annihilated everyone, you have a close loss. The game was a lot closer against Tech, but you do have a straight up close loss on the road to a BYU. You have a path in. You need some help. I think the ACC, like, we need a Georgia Tech collapse. We need a Virginia collapse. You need Louisville to probably even have 2 to 3 losses, or maybe if they are a 2-loss team, like maybe they get in the Big 12 title the ACC title game and they get blown out there, and that's your other path in. But ACC only 1 in, Big 10 only 3 in, and then a little more SEC chaos. There is a path, Sam, and you need help, like you mentioned, but at least there's a chance for Utah. And I never thought we'd be even talking about a 2-loss Utah team having a chance at an at-large team. But with how dominant this team has been, I think it's at least worth a discussion point right now.
You're also going to have to keep an eye out for Notre Dame. They also only have 2 losses. And, I mean, Notre Dame's almost always going to get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to college football playoff rankings. So that's another team that Utah's going to have to compete with. But also a sneaky thing to look out for. I don't think this would happen, but it would be so funny. Let's say the rest of the ACC just absolutely collapses the rest of the year. Where does the College Football Playoff Committee put San Diego State tonight? Where do they put Memphis tonight? Where do they put North Texas tonight? JMU, they're also only 7-1. There's a few group of 5 teams that like maybe they would sneak in. You would have to pray for an implosion for the ACC. And I'm talking like 4-loss champion. Yeah. The odds of that are so slim. But watch out for these group of 5 teams, because at the end of the day, those are still going to be some of the champions that are competing with a non-champion Utah if it does come down to attending Utah hoping to get in.
Some of these teams in the ACC, like I look at a Virginia, and I give you Virginia credit, right? You beat Florida State win just doesn't simply look as good. Florida State is like they started out amazing, and then now they're awful. Like it's hard to even fathom what happened to Florida State, but they do have a really good win over Louisville, because I like that Louisville team. I think it's a good win, but then you nearly lose. And I know the Tar Heels are getting better, but you cannot, if you are a college football playoff team, beat North Carolina 17-16. That is, with how bad that Bill Belichick led team has been, that can't happen. You go on the road and you win at Cal by 10. That's good. I still think they stumble somewhere in here. Lost to NC State's a little bit better with what NC State did to Georgia Tech, I guess, but I just don't value the ACC as much. I genuinely believe the best conference in college football this year, depth-wise, is the SEC. They claim it every year no matter what, but I think depth-wise, the SEC is the best. I think the Big Ten would still be the next conference just because of how top-heavy. Mm-hmm. You could argue they have the 3 best teams in the country. I don't think I wouldn't put Oregon over A&M, obviously, but I do think they have 1 or 2 right now in Ohio State and Indiana, because as much as I like A&M, they need a couple more of those impressive wins. They really haven't beaten any of those ranked SEC teams yet. And then to me, you do get to the Big 12 and some of those teams at the top before the ACC, because some of the teams in the ACC, and yes, the Big 12 has their Oklahoma States, but man, I look at the likes of a Stanford, even a Florida State, what they become right now. A Wake Forest is having a rough year too. And they've been a little better, I guess. But some of these teams, Boston College might be the worst P4 team. Like I think the Big 12 is clearly better than the ACC right now. And I do think the rankings will reflect that tonight. Sam, do you expect both BYU and Tech in the top 10?
Yeah, 100%. I think probably maybe at highest, BYU would probably be 7. I think they'll more likely be 8 or 9. And then Tech would just be like 1 spot right behind them just because they have 1 loss. So it's going to be a top 10 matchup in Lubbock. Game day is going to be there. A cool 2 weeks for the Big 12, having game day in Salt Lake City for the Utah-Cincinnati game. That was also a really cool just environment as well for, outside fans watching the Big 12. And then this game is going to be awesome. It's the BYU Tech game is probably like the game for the Big 12 all season, other than maybe BYU Utah. But I mean, this has conference championship implications. This has playoff implications. Game day is going to be there, and it's going to be nuts. I mean, it's a cool time to be a part of a team that's in the Big 12. I mean, these last 2 weeks have been great for the conference.
Utah BYU is massive because of what the rivalry represents. Yeah. This is literally a matchup against 2 high top teams. Like it's a better matchup overall than if we ignore like just the rivalry standpoint of things. So that's where it is exciting to get this matchup too. BYU fans are not going to be happy where they're ranked at tonight, Sam, but I do think even if they're in the top 10, they'll say, why are we behind some 1-loss teams? And I think it's pretty easy to say, like, look, you only win by 3 against a Colorado team that a Utah goes in and they blow out. Like if you want to be higher in these rankings, you need to be blowing out some of these teams and looking like you are this juggernaut of a team. Don't go to overtime with an Arizona team that I don't think is the greatest right here too. Like even look, Utah beat West Virginia on the road by more than BYU beat West Virginia in their own home. So this is for BYU, you're going to be in the top 10 because you're undefeated. And that is a skill to be undefeated. But if you want to take it to that next level, you got to start blowing some of these teams out. And you don't need to blow out this weekend. You just got to get a win in Lubbock, which would be your most impressive win. You have a good win over Utah. I'm not saying that you don't, but some of these top teams, they've blown out some of those other teams. That's the one thing that BYU still needs to do. But BYU does this weekend get an opportunity to shine on College Game Day. What does it mean? Back-to-back weeks for College Game Day going to the Big 12. And we still got to talk about how great it was that they were up in Salt Lake City in one moment. Today's show is brought to you by our great friends at Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, it's truly unmatched. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkouts. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is really what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. The app makes it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I also love those zone deals too. You can pick the section and Game Time picks the seats and you save big. So you can take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go download Game Time today. Despite what some individuals, even on my own network, said, the Big 12 is getting College Game Day in back-to-back weeks, and that is incredibly exciting. And Sam, I think that does show a little bit like, hey, ESPN, I think in part is learning from some of their mistakes and hearing some of the criticism of, hey, we were only going to these massive big games. We weren't spreading the game day wealth a little bit. And when I say game day wealth, I really mean it, because the game day, the hype, everything you get out of it, it's immense here. So I think it's really good for the Big 12 that they get in a back-to-back week. It's a great way to spotlight the conference.
Yeah, it was amazing to actually have game day be back in Salt Lake City. I know that ESPN caught a lot of flack for not having the Utah BYU game a few weeks ago on. I mean, it was a mistake. Like, they should have had it. It's one of the best, probably a top 5 rivalry in all of college football. And it does make me upset that Big Noon Kickoff was there instead of College Game Day. I think I'm kind of an old school guy. I like College Game Day a little bit more than Big Noon Kickoff.
Same.
So I was a little bit upset that ESPN wasn't there to highlight kind of the great culture that we have in the state and the great football that is being produced right now. But coming to a 2-loss Utah team, I mean, that wasn't necessarily like an easy choice. I mean, they probably could have gone to another place and maybe that would have been fine. But it was a really cool matchup and it was a really cool scene. I was actually there covering it for the Salt Lake Tribune. It was the day after Halloween. It was really, really cold. I mean, when Pat McAfee took his shirt off, it was like 38 degrees and it was like 7 in the morning. It was a cool scene. Everybody I talked to there said that they like skipped out on Halloween parties to go and support the Utes. One guy I talked to said that he canceled Halloween plans with his girlfriend to go to game day.
Respect.
Which I'm not advocating for. I think you should probably hang out with your girlfriend. It's just football. But it was a really cool event. And I mean, the field goal kick was awesome. Just all these things were really amazing. And then the game to follow it up nearly 12 hours after the show ended, which is a really cool thing to see. And I'm glad that they're also going down to Lubbock as well to showcase what's going on in this conference. Because I mean, last year, this conference didn't really get a lot of love. I mean, we want to talk about the BYU Arizona State game last year that ended in just total chaos with all those field storms. I mean, you can make the argument that College Game Day should have been there, and ESPN just wasn't looking. They weren't paying attention. So it is cool that they are paying attention now. I think it's in large part because they got so much flack for not coming to Provo for the Holy War a few weeks ago. But we can't gripe about it too much. It's cool that they're paying attention now.
Yeah, and I do appreciate it that they are willing to say, like, let's go to some of these Big 12 sites. They could have easily gone to Austin last week for Texas Vandy. It would have been the wrong decision, and they made it before. But they said, no, you know what? Let's go spotlight this Big 12 matchup. And there wasn't a huge difference between Texas Vandy versus a Utah Cincy. Like, those were both, neither one was a top 10 matchup versus this week. You do have a top 10 matchup, and you had to make the right choice to pick it, and they absolutely did too. Honestly, Sam, I hope they keep it rolling. Like, I am all in support of them going to that D2 game. I don't know if you've heard about this. There's a massive push online for them go to a Division II game next week. Like, I would absolutely love to see that. I hope that is what game day does coming up here soon. But you mentioned game day last week, such an epic atmosphere. The fans, everyone represented the school so well there. It was one of those just epic scenes that every time college game day comes to Utah, it is special. Everyone was up rowdy early. Even people, like you said, skipping Halloween plans with their girlfriend. Yeah. Honestly, like, hey, do what you do to support your school, man. We appreciate it here at Utah. You got to talk to the guy who kicked the field goal, actually. Tell me a little bit about, I just blanked on his name. Yeah, that was absolutely epic.
It was Jonah Knuble, a senior finance student at the U, and really cool story. So what happened was this kid named Garrett. He won the ticket or like the drawing to go kick the field goal in this challenge, And Garrett goes like, dude, I've never kicked a football in my life. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So he was about to like ditch. Like, he didn't really know what to do. He didn't want to kick. And eventually his friend kind of called him over and was like, hey, dude, talk to this guy. And it was Jonah. And Jonah was like, yeah, I was a kicker at Jordan High School a few years ago. Like, the only reason I camped out for this event was to potentially kick this field goal. So right then and there, they struck a deal. They said, all right, let's make it 50-50. If you make it, we'll split the earnings. Pat McAfee started off at $750,000 to them, which would have been a lot. He absolutely shanks the first field goal.
Yes, he does.
wide right, not even close.
They iced him too. They were rough. They iced him.
Yeah. They gave him one more chance. They lowered the money down to I think 250,000. So split two ways, 125 for each. He makes it. That's life-changing money right there. That's, if I just got $125,000 right now, like that would be life-changing. That's so amazing. So I talked to them afterwards. They were just ecstatic. It was a really cool story. But yeah, I wrote about it on the Salt Lake Tribune, so you can go ahead and check that out. But yeah, really cool scenes down in Salt Lake City last weekend.
Yeah, awesome having game day there. And Utah might have a chance to be involved in some other big matchups this season if they can take care of business. Really excited to see how the rest of the season is going to unfold. But Sam, in the meantime, you just talked about a story you did. Please tell everyone else where they can find your work at.
Yeah, so you can look me up on Twitter. It's at Sam Foster, but the T in Foster is a 1. It's just right under there under my name. So I'm the sports editor for BYU student newspaper, The Daily Universe. I'm also doing some freelance work for the Salt Lake Tribune. So just go ahead and follow my Twitter and you can see all the stuff I post.
Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate taking the time to come on, man.
Okay. Thanks, JT.
Last thing I was going to say, by the way, I'll just say before we get out of here.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm alive that for College Game Day to have name drop Jordan High School. If you would have said, JT, there's going to be a high school mentioned on College Game Day from Utah, I'd have been there. Like, easily, Jordan would have not made the top 30. Like, shout out Jordan High School. They're not trying to hate her, but like, it's just a fact. Like, just not Jordan is not known for football, but they got name dropped on there. You love to see it, and you love to see this Utah football team surging at the right time. We're going to continue to talk about this Utah football team, how they turned it around, recruiting updates, and getting you ready for their eventual matchup with the Baylor Bears. All that and more coming up on Locked On Utes later this week. We hope you'll join us then.